Hello and welcome everyone to episode 2 of the Between the Worlds podcast with myself, Raven, and of course Jackie, our lovely co-host. First, before we start, I just want to say thank you very much to everyone who tuned in to the first episode and gave us all the great feedback and tuned in for the premiere as well. It was great seeing you all there. Today, we're going to be talking about Kelsier as a character within Mistborn and in the larger scope of the Cosmere as a whole. So to kick it off, I wanted to just start by saying that I had a brief discussion with Jackie on this when we were discussing the topic, and she said she thinks Kelsier should have remained dead. Would you mind just elaborating on that?
Well, I'm generally in favor of heroes dying heroes, and how he went down. Like he gave was it like the chapter before or something. He challenged Vin on what she thought love was and how to trust people, and he gave her like really solid advice. And I was like, yes, that is good mentor. Kelsier has worked his way through this plot and he's got some weird things about him, but that was a good mentor moment. He should die now and just leave that as like his crowning achievement. And then he did die and he went out like a total boss. And it was like, yes, I am sad, but I'm also happy that like this has come to fruition with his arc. And then he's then he gets an honorable mention at the end of Hero of Ages uh Sazed says that like, oh, Halcyon wanted me to fix
To make Spooka Mistborn, I think you said.
make Spooka Mistborn. And at the same time, when Sazed's also saying like, yeah, I can't reach the land of the dead. So I'm like, huh. And then what happens and I saw the fan theory is that Kelsier's Thydacar, and I was like, oh, maybe, but really? He went out so great. And then I read Mistborn Secret History and got the Thydacar confirmation and was like, oh, that was not the end of his arc. He's got further to go. How is Brandon going to top what he's already done? So it's not that I hate Kelsier as a character. I just felt like he had a good ending and now it's not an ending.
No, I can 100% understand what you're saying. I mean, like, he had a really good ending, quote unquote ending, at the end of Final Empire, or near the end. And had he just been a one off character for the Mistborn series, I think it would have been done perfectly well. But that being said, I do like the direction that Brandon is going in kind of extending his arc. I kind of see pre-death Kelsier as separate from cognitive shadow Kelsier, in that since Kelsier became a cognitive shadow and became aware of the wider Cosmere, his ambition has taken a much different turn than before that. So I do enjoy that Brandon is taking Kelsier in that direction, and for me, it's also the idea of this is a character that we know and that we enjoy, and that the fandom enjoys. But I think the fandom also has a very warped sense of who Kelsier really is and what kind of a character he is. They kind of see him as this really good guy who helped take down the Empire, but a lot of people don't realize just how dark and brutal Kelsier was. They kind of gloss over that. So having that kind of person in charge of a gigantic Cosmere worldwide society, secret society, that has influence on multiple Cosmere worlds, and that will apparently get more exposition on in the next Wax and Wayne book, which I know you haven't read yet, so I won't go into that, but just knowing that, I think it's going to work out a lot better than some people might think. Now, I'm not saying, of course, you didn't say that it's necessarily going to be bad, but I do hear what you're saying, in that it would have been, or you would have preferred for Kelsier's arc to have ended there and just been a perfect ending the way it was. but I still think it's gonna be better in the long run, at the very least from my perspective.
And I think you do hit the nail on the head for like where my discomfort comes from, which is that I originally saw this as a fan theory. And this, of course, is the fan who's like, Kelsier is the greatest thing since sliced toast. I'm like, he started his he started his own cult, and that's usually not the sign of a mentally stable person. Um, and especially like I think the world building in Mistborn makes it clear that he was not sincere. He was sincerely wanted to overthrow the final empire and was willing to do whatever means necessary. And it just so happened that he started his own cult, and it was not like a sincere philosophical revelation that he wanted to like bring the people. It was to achieve his own ends. And so there's like that part of Kelsier that is very dark and disturbing. And from there, like seeing, I see this part of Kelsier that like kind of ended, and to see that, at least in the fan theory, not continued because the fan is like, he's so great. Whereas I do think that Sanderson and Mistborn Secret History does it does bear this out, that like Sanderson still sees Kelsier as a flawed character, and it is that flaw, that selfish desire for once world, now Cosmere domination, is the flaw that I think that Kelsier still has, and that is what makes him worthy for Brandon to drag out. And it happens that everyone also really likes Kelsier, whereas my fear was that Brandon was like, oh, everyone really likes Kelsier and thinks he's the greatest thing since sliced toast, so I might as well continue on like this, like the fan image of Kelsier into the Stormlight Archive, and that I am opposed to, but I don't think that Brandon will do that.
No, I mean, I think he confirmed that he originally, or at least when Way of Kings was still coming out, he thought of actually having Tensoon be Thydakar just wearing Kelsier's bones. That was before Secret History was written, so he kind of went in, thinking that Kelsier's story was wrapped up. He just saw a way to expand it and to make it a lot more, having the character of Thydakar match the character of Kelsier. Because when I recently reread Hero of Ages, and Tensoon's personality really doesn't strike me as the kind who would have started a cult, as you say, and a secret organization dedicated to what it seems to be just pure power. Because that's kind of what the Ghostbloods are formed on. It's this predator and prey type dynamic that they have with the initiates, and they're all just about power. Now, I don't know if Kelsier is necessarily going to be someone who wants to, as you said, try and take over the whole Cosmere, just dominate everything. For me, it kind of seems like his current goal is, number one, get his body back. He wants to not be a cognitive shadow anymore. But from there, I don't know. I mean, will he want to take over the Cosmere? He's very ambitious. He might very well, but I don't necessarily think that's the direction he is going to go. But I do think that he'd even be willing to, say, help Odium if it served his own goals, whichever they may be.
Well, I think we've already seen the Ghostbloods help Odium when they gave Raboniel the chain and lift in book 4. I do think that my definition of Kelsier's vision of Cosmere domination isn't necessarily everyone worshiping him as like the survivor, the Lord of Scars. I think he is more of like a mafia type boss that wants to be able to conduct his business and be unopposed in that, and his business is sucking the investiture out of is like this investiture funneling organization from one planet to the other to do things of reasons. Not sure on that part yet, but where it's more like he's more like the evil corporation, whereas you like as opposed to Odium or the evil god in like Trell, I think that they talk about in Mistborn too, that are more stereotypical dark lords of power. And I think that the interesting thing about the Ghostbloods is, yeah, they could be fine underneath that type of Dark Lord rulership, or maybe they will join, or maybe they will see that ethical business practices will reap a larger reward in the long run and turn over to the good guys eventually.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think it's all to do with what their end goal is for the Ghostbloods. Now, obviously, the end goal for the Ghostbloods as an organization might be different from what the end goal is for Kelsier as a person. From what I can see, it seems like he wants to, number one, he has his bones that he wants to heal back up into a body that he can kind of insert his cognitive shadow back into. I don't know why he wants to be able to carry Stormlight, maybe in a way using Stormlight healing to heal his bones, but I mean, we'll have to really just see what his goals are there. But in terms of the Ghostbloods as an organization, for me, it really just seems like they attract the type that will. I think when you and I had our first discussion, I kind of labeled Kelsier as chaotic neutral. And I feel like the Ghostbloods are very much in that same vein, whereas they will do whatever is necessary to attain their goals, whether it's murder, extortion, serving the one god that's trying to take over the whole Cosmere. Doesn't really matter to them. Now, will that work out? I don't think so, because, I mean, maybe they did help Raboniel with capturing Lift and things like that, but I also don't see Taravangian now as Odeon. I don't foresee him at any point being scared to actually use them in the same way they would use other people. So I'm actually quite interested and excited to see the interplay between the Ghostbloods and the new Odium as well.
Yeah, my theory on why Kelsier would want Stormlight is that the Heralds have always been able to manifest their own bodies, while the Fused have to get another body. And the return of Nalthis, they have their own bodies, but I think Vasher describes it as stapled back on, and it's a very like the person dies and then shortly later, before the body can decompose, the cognitive shadow is reinserted into that body. And I think that there is a unique property of Stormlight that allows it to manifest the body that matches the soul or cognitive shadow. Like, and we've seen that already with like that is what radiant healing is that it is Stormlight reforming the body to match what the soul inside it believes it to be. And so I think that for a man who's trying to get his body back, that would be a very appealing power that I don't, that as far as I know, only Stormlight possesses. Like, the Void Light does also have healing, but the Fused still have to body snatch from their own people in order to fully manifest. So
yeah, I mean,
that's my point.
It seems very much like it's tied to spiritual identity in terms of how their body would basically come back to its former state. Like we saw that with Kaladin, it took him forever to get rid of his scars, and that's because of he
Mhm.
always saw himself as kind of branded as a slave and a failure. So it's all about spiritual identity. Now I wonder, because the level of healing we're talking about is taking bones and creating a brand new body, and we know that the heralds are able to basically get a brand new body when they come back. Now I wonder if Dalinar's current exploration of his own powers and trying to get in touch with Ishar, whilst Ishar is currently a bit crazy, yes, but getting in touch with Ishar to kind of rework the Oath Pact, I wonder if Kelsier is kind of looking at that as well, because if you were to rework the Oath Pact or kind of manipulate it in a way so that his body would completely regenerate like that of the heralds, it might be that that is what he's going for. But I haven't really seen the Ghostbloods or him interact directly with Dalinar, so I don't know if I'm 100% confident with that theory.
I do think that Dalinar, or because Ashar was manifesting spren bodies, like physical bodies, and they don't have anything. They don't even have bones. They're not even supposed to have a physical body in the physical realm. And so that is another, like, I think, hint at pointing towards Stormlight's extreme manifestation powers. But yeah, the Ghostbloods, as far as we know, haven't really been talking. I mean, I think since Yasna came back from the dead, she's been like at Dalinar's side. So I can see why they wouldn't necessarily approach Dalinar, since she's there, all Yasna-y. Whereas like Ishar, who is actually succeeding in this manifestation endeavor, or at least to a certain extent, like they see he's actually getting it to work or somewhat, but we haven't seen the Ghostbloods interact with him like at all, as far as we know. And so I'm curious to see if maybe they will actually have some part in like the next book when Paladin and Zeth go to Shinovar. Although they always seem to be more of like the Ghostbloods always seem to just be running into Shallan more often than not, and with like, because their stated goal is Ba'edo Mishram, so maybe they just are completely clueless in this like one area, which would be interesting since they fancy themselves a all-knowing secret organization of supreme efficiency, and yet they're completely blind to like this thing.
I mean, it's totally possible. Because you make a good point. Like Ishar's experiment, whilst he is failing currently in that he hasn't been able to successfully bring a spren over that actually survives, if he somehow had, Kelsier's body maybe regenerated somehow, and the ability to draw cognitive shadows out of the cognitive realm, I mean, maybe. But like you said, there hasn't been really any indication that the Ghostbloods had any contact with Ishar or with Dalinar, and not even really much with Yasna. They're currently just really dealing with Shallan, and for some reason they are obsessed with the all this. Well, I don't want to say all the like Ba'edo Mishram. That's kind of their main one, but they also kind of were interested in the others as well. So I really can't think of exactly what their actual goals are at the moment. But it really, I mean, if you look at Ba'edo Mishram, right, and I'm kind of rambling here, I know, but if you look at Ba'edo Mishram, her apparent capture completely changed the way that all the spren work on Roshar, and it also somehow altered the Nahel bond between the Radiants and their spren. So maybe they are trying to recover Ba'edo Mishram to fix that issue that was, the issue that was caused by her capture, which in turn will help Kelsier get his body back, because we really don't have any other information on what their goals are, and that seems to be their most immediate one, is getting Kelsier his body back, or at least that's Thydakar/Kelsier's goal at the moment.
I definitely don't. I definitely think that if they are getting Ba'edo Mishram, I don't think it's to necessarily release her on Roshar. I think it's to ship her off in this like misguided um attempt that like, oh, she has the power of connection on Roshar, therefore if we ship her over to Scadrial, um she will have the power of connection there, which, like, yeah, now that I think about that theory, that would assume that the Ghostbloods, for all their knowledge, are in fact like completely ignorant about the nature of connection, and since they, or which is odd because Mraize is the one that told Shallan about how like investiture gets heavier and heavier as it gets further and further away from its source. So I don't know. I think my working theory up until this moment is now very flawed about what they want with Ba Ado Mishram, and I will have to reconsider that, though, because they talk about wanting to ship Stormlight from across the Cosmere, and they brought a Sion from Cell over to Roshar. So, like, they're definitely in the investiture shipping industry. And so that's kind of where my
theory
thought
that I'm working on right now, as we're talking. Would it maybe their drive to try and get investiture off of Roshar into, for example, Scadrial is number one kind of, proof of concept. They're trying to prove and find a way for this to work. And Roshar, as we know, is kind of overflowing with investiture. It's the easiest place to get it. So they use that as a testing ground, move the investiture to Scadrial, because for some reason and somehow we know that Kelsier is currently trapped on Scadrial. He can't leave that cognitive realm. So if they can somehow move investiture to Scadrial, they'll have found a way to move his cognitive shadow to Roshar, where with the abilities of Bond and Spren and whatever Ishar is doing and whatever Ba Ado Mishram did when she was captured, using that information to kind of manifest his body on Roshar, where they can use Stormlight to achieve their goals. But in order to do that, they kind of need to first prove in a safe way, without risking Kelsier himself, that investiture can be moved from one cognitive realm to another. So, I mean, that's just something I thought up now. I don't know what you think about that.
I think that this is like completely out, like there's nothing in the books that support, well, there's one like throwaway paragraph in Rhythm of War that mentions the Fuse trying to fly up into space. And outside of the book, Sanderson has talked about how they're headed towards a space age, and and I really think that the solution to like investiture's inability to span the cognitive realm is that they're going to have to take it through the physical realm, as that is the only reason why people would travel in space when you can like walk through when you can walk from planet to planet in the cognitive realm. And yeah, it takes a while, like, and there's some time distortion, I think, but it's still relatively faster than traveling through space. So like, so my question's always been like, why would they have a space race? But if literally, if this is how you have to transport your power source throughout the Cosmere, then spaceships make sense. And so, I don't know if, I guess, we've got if like Team Honor will be like NASA, and the Ghostbloods are going to be like SpaceX, and then Scadrial, I guess, can be like USSR era space race, and it's kind of how I see it all coming down.
I mean, true, and that's fair enough, but at the same time, like, obviously there will eventually be a space stage, like Brandon has confirmed that, and I'm pretty sure Scadrial is going to be at the forefront of that just because of their technological advancement, probably followed very closely by Roshar with their Fabrial technology. But the way I see it is that'll be the eventual way to get around the Cosmere, because you can't always rely on the perpendicularities, and there's a lot of issues with going to and from the cognitive realm. I mean, like, L-scholars have that ability on Roshar, but how do you do that on Scadrial? You know, it's not necessarily going to work the same way. So they're going to have to rely on interspace travel, yes. However, I think that the reason the Ghostbloods are currently following this course of action, which still kind of holds up with my theory, is that Kelsier is trapped, number one, in the cognitive realm, and number two, in the cognitive realm of Scadrial specifically. So even though they could find a way to travel through space and things like that, he's still kind of, screwed in a way, because he can't move out of that one cognitive realm that he's currently trapped in. So that's why that's potentially, I will say, why they're trying to figure out a way to get investiture from one planet's cognitive realm to another. So I don't know if that is the case, but I'd actually be interested to see how the next Mistborn book and the next Stormlight book plays out, because I'm kind of growing on this theory at the moment.
And I do think that this might be where, like, Kelsier's ends and the Ghostbloods ends part ways. If he's, like, just super focused on getting his body back. However, because I'm on the internet, I kind of know how the third book of Wax and Wayne ends. And so I'm not entirely certain how stuck Kelsier is in the cognitive realm going into, like, Mistborn Era 2. Not Mistborn Era 2. Stormlight Era 2. So I guess when I made the theory, it's kind of like either Kelsier will have found the way into the physical realm, and then that will launch the space age on Scadrial, or he won't, and the Ghostbloods are going to be like, hey man, we can't get this to work, but we found this other way that works. So this has been a great working relationship, but we're going to make credible amounts of money doing this thing and have a good existence. And that would be also interesting.
I mean, that's 100% possible. I didn't even know that you'd kind of spoiled yourself in a way as to how Kelsier is currently operating in Mistborn Era 2. I mean, if he still uses that method, I don't know if that would, make a difference, if that will actually allow him to leave Scadrial via just physical means, or if that would still cause an issue because his cognitive shadow is still kind of attached in an artificial way, and it's not 100% integrated because it's not really his body, things like that. I think these are just questions that we have that we can't really answer until we really see where Brandon is going with both Mistborn and Stormlight in future. But you made a good point in that I do think that whilst Kelsier is obviously focused on getting his body back and getting back to the physical realm fully, he's kind of using the Ghostbloods as a means to an end, whilst it still benefits them for him to pursue this route of, moving investiture, things like that. They'll continue to see him as a leader, but I think there might very well be a time where the Ghostbloods and Kelsier part ways, whether on friendly terms or unfriendly terms, I don't know, but I can actually fully see, kind of like I don't want to call them a corporation, but kind of like a corporate coup where they kind of just kick him out because he's not serving their interests anymore either. I mean, that's 100% possible.
Yeah, I mean, I'm comfortable with calling them a corporation. I kind of think that, like, the Pixar's by and large, like the generic evil corporation that shows up in a fair number of Pixar movies, most notably WALL-E. I kind of like have them very similarly, like the Ghostbloods and their they're like they're literally want to be the power company that controls. They want to be in control of the literal power, which makes them powerful, even if they aren't your typical Dark Lord of epic fantasy. And I think that as long as Kelsier is like helping them to achieve that goal of being the power broker, I think Kelsier is fine with that, and he's just doing this like body thing on the side, and then they will stay together. But I mean, Kelsier is a Sanderson character. He is going to have an arc. He will probably change in some fundamental way, and maybe he'll finally realize that he should go see Mare in the afterlife, or see if Mare is in the afterlife. Like, if like that's one thing they really like talk about in Mistborn Secret History, is like no sane person would want to stick around. The Lord Ruler Rashik, when he gets there, he's like, I'm so over this place, and just disappears. He has like no concept of why Kelsier would want to stay. And I think that like when Brandon wrote Secret History and was like working with the idea of why Kelsier is Thydakar, why not TenSoon? TenSoon, although he did like the thing that we first know him for is killing another Kandra, but like after the Hero of Ages, he's so noble that it's really hard to imagine him as later becoming the corporate overlord. And so Sanderson has done all this work to make Kelsier want something that he probably can't have, having to even if like don't necessarily know what that is. I think he's currently saying that he wants his body back, but I think that he has like deeper issues that Sanderson's going to explore, and from there that might be where he might convert the Ghostbloods, or they might part ways.
I mean, you've touched on some very good points. I didn't even consider that. You're 100% right. They essentially will become the power broker for the Cosmere, in that if they control the only means of transporting investiture from world to world, and I mean, imagine if they even get to do that with the investiture in Cell, in that cognitive realm. I mean, that would skyrocket them to probably being the most dangerous and most influential organization in the whole Cosmere. So, I mean, that 100% seems likely. And you also touched on, like, when Rashik came to the cognitive realm after he died, he immediately just was like, peace out. I don't want to, I'm glad to be done with this. And Kelsier wasn't. I don't think Kelsier was ever really 100% mentally stable, obviously considering all the torture he went through in his life. And I really like how at the end of Secret History, when he meets Vin, and after she's obviously sacrificed herself, and in the same way that he told her that she has a lot to learn about friendship, she told him that he has a lot to learn about love. And I think that's kind of defines Kelsier in a way, in that he can be a great friend. He can be close with a lot of people, whether on a deep level or superficial level, I can't really say. But when it comes to his own self-interest versus, being there for other people, I think he's the kind of person who would always, go to the side of what's in it for him, if I can put it that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's definitely where he ended Mistborn Secret History. Like, he did help Buzz, Lyris, but at the end he wanted just to like get back at, well, the evil god, whoever that was, and then he found out that it was AT, and so like he just kind of redirected his anger from the Lord Ruler to AT, and then once AT is destroyed and he's still not happy, he's just trying to find something to fill that void, and it is for him, it's still like like him that became getting his body back, but I don't think that he will be satisfied with just getting his body back. And whatever comes next, either he's going to, I don't know if it's a redemption arc per se, but more of like Ellen at the end of Final Empire, where he's like, oh, the revolution's happening and I'm on the wrong side kind of moment. And I think that could be very powerful in Kelsier, since he always sees himself as like the leader of the rebellion against the corrupt hierarchy, and like for him to eventually come to realize that, oh, he's now in charge of the corrupt hierarchy, and he's become exactly what he set out to destroy.
Oh my god,
That
you make
could be
such
a
good
really
point.
cool moment.
Yeah, I mean, it's like he's essentially gonna fulfill that. It's already become a meme on the internet of, you either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain, and that kind of encapsulates exactly what's going on with Kelsier. And maybe very well the reason he wants his body back is probably because being a cognitive shadow for so long has some serious, effects on the person and their
Mhm.
spirit web. I mean, just look at the heralds. That none of them are really all there, and they were cognitive shadows for a very long time. Now, obviously, they had their own issues and struggles that they had to deal with, but that's probably part of the reason why he's looking for his body. But yeah, I honestly think that the way it's going, he's probably gonna be. He's carrying that rebellious spirit to a point where eventually he's gonna cause other people to have to rebel against him, just because he's seizing power. And even though he might have the best of intentions, he probably, because of his selfish nature in a way, he probably won't see the wider implications of what he's doing and who it's affecting.
Mhm. I mean, I also kind of wonder how stable is Vasher, because we know he's been a cognitive shadow for a while. But he's been a return, so a cognitive shadow connected to a body. Um, and they did like world hopping as the five scholars, so that kind of, with like the time distortion, has like shaved off probably a few centuries, but like he's been existing for a very long time. And I think the worst he has right now is like a drinking habit and sullenness, as far as we can see. So like there is something to Vasher. I think Sanderson has come out and said that he's not living his best life right now, but like compared to other cognitive shadows of his age, he's looking relatively good.
Very
And
true, very true. I'm just thinking
so,
now because it might be that it's due to the fact that Vasher, because he's a return, they have to constantly consume breaths. So it might be his constant consumption, in a way, of investiture is kind of keeping those effects off him. I don't know what you think about that.
that is, yeah. Like, it might just be something of, like, endowments magic that, yeah, she can't manifest the body, but she can keep you relatively sane throughout your experience, provided that you have a constant renewable investiture. Because somehow he got Stormlight to work as breaths, so I'm not really sure how that works. But like, it is the one divine breath inside of him that is keeping him alive and I guess relatively sane, which is not something that any other cognitive shadow has displayed either. So if that's something maybe it's always like there's like the one of like the underlying questions is like I love Warbreaker, but it's kind of like why was this story so important that Sanderson decided to write this one off? He says it's to introduce the sword, but it's the whole magic system that we really get the introduction to, and like its breaths are being used more and more on Roshar. So it's like the question for me is why is this important? Why is it here? And it can't just be to wrap Kaladin up in laundry, as funny as that was. Like, that is like the introduction to something bigger. And if Harold's sanity is the bigger thing, then I am all for it.
I mean, yeah, I think that maybe Sanderson wrote Warbreaker as a way to, introduce Vasher and Nightblood and things like that. But I think obviously he's also I don't want to say he's making it up as it goes along, but there's a lot of things that he to himself figures out and canonizes as he writes, as he adds new books to whichever series he's currently writing. And I think that what might have happened is as he developed the magic system of Nalthus, the breaths and things like that, and as he progressed with having Vasher on Roshar and interacting with Kaladin and using breaths, I think he's kind of pushing us in the direction of how do breaths, keeping it relevant to our current conversation on Kelsier, how would breaths kind of help a person staple a cognitive shadow onto a body without there being any negative effects? Because obviously, like Sanderson said, Vasher isn't living his best life. He's currently got quite a lot of issues, but he's not suffering any mental illness problems, any craziness, any real problems other than he's just in a bad place. So I think it definitely is that case of having the divine breath. As long as it's constantly fed with enough investiture, it'll kind of keep the spirit web whole whilst attaching it to a body and kind of prevent any deterioration that a hemolytic spike, for example, couldn't do.
Mm-hmm. And I definitely don't think that like Sanderson woke up like 10 years ago with like the perfect outline of all of these details of exactly how the Stormlight Archive and the greater Cosmere arc is going to go. But I do think what Sanderson is very good at is writing magic systems that are so like intertwined with the world, and like he thinks about how they interact in different ways. So what he's done is he's like the painter who has set up the most elaborate palette and given himself so many options of like where these powers are coming from and what they're doing. And I think like it was kind of just in talking this out with you right in the moment that I'm like, wait a minute, Vasher is an old returned, probably older than Kelsier, but Kelsier is already going crazy, but Vasher is stable, and because Vasher is stable because that is the nature of the return, that they are the gifts of endowment. They are there to help the people and remain good and stable, and so like that is inherent in what endowment wanted to give Nalthus. Whereas Scadrial, that was not part of the vision created by Lyris and AT, or even AT. AT was just to preserve and to stay status quo, although putting that into Kelsier, who wants to change and rebel, that's not the most stable of connections. And so like just in like thinking that world through on its own level, and then thinking of, oh, I want a world that's set up completely differently, that has different standards in their magic, he's just gave us these two systems that, like, hey, down the road, maybe they can complement each other and fix the problems of each other. But I don't think, like, I think it was the attention to detail in the original creation of these magic systems that made this option possible, as opposed to, like, Sanderson sitting there 10 years ago thinking, oh, I want to have this old cognitive shadow from this genitor of this system be healed by this other magic system at the very end, and it'll be a great moment. I don't think he reverse engineered it. I think he's just that good at creating these worlds up front that they complement each other accidentally and gives us room to theorize and him to create.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that it's a case of Sanderson just luckily has the kind of brain where when he formulates worlds and magic systems, they kind of interlink very well. And I really like, the direction we're going here with the theory, in that if you think about it, right, the next book, I have a very strong feeling, and Sanderson has confirmed we will see what Vasher was up to during Rhythm of War and things like that in the next book. And I also feel like we're going to get quite a bit of Vivenna as well. And if you consider that Kaladin is going to Shinovar to confront Ishar, and you have Vasher, who is a cognitive shadow, who's basically, we've only ever seen him really interact much with Kaladin, so he might very well be going there as well. That might be where he is already during Rhythm of War. So if you have all of those events happening around, this Returned, which is a cognitive shadow, and this Herald, which is kind of bringing cognitive shadows in a way, which is what Spren kind of are in a way, to the physical realm, things like that, I think we're going to see a lot of Ghostblood attention. If not on that group, we're going to see it. We're going to see that group in Shinovar kind of reveal a method for Kelsier to maybe utilize in the back half of Stormlight. So I'm thinking that might be where the story is going, considering all the connections we've just pointed out between Breaths and Stormlight and cognitive shadows and things like that.
Yeah, and I think it'd just be super ironic if, like, they figure out how to heal heralds and establish, like, a secure connection between cognitive shadows and bodies, and then, like, the Ghostbloods are out chasing Ba Eta Mishram and have and, like, messing things up for the world otherwise, and just, like, completely miss, like, the thing that they were looking for. I think that would be a good way for them to get their, I guess, comeuppance is the word that comes to mind, of, like, oh, you were so single-minded in your hunt of this thing that you missed the thing you were actually looking for. I don't know if they are that stupid. I kind of want them to be that stupid. Not that it's really a stupidity, but, like, a keeping in their character of the hunt and the pursuit of the item no matter what at the expense of all else. And it would just serve them right if they expended the knowledge that they were actually pursuing in pursuit of this lesser thing that they thought would get them the knowledge but actually won't.
Yeah, I mean, as much as I like how badass the Ghostbloods are, I would definitely not be against seeing them having that "oh crap, we messed up" moment. So I really hope that happens. But we've been going for a while, so I just wanted us to give our last kind of closing thoughts on, Kelsier, the Ghostbloods, what we think of this whole discussion as a whole before we wrap up. So do you have any final thoughts on Kelsier, the Ghostbloods, his story, things like that?
I think that Sanderson, through Mistborn's Secret History, has set up an interesting character arc that, as we've seen here, plenty of options that could be interesting and fulfilling for the reader to travel with him on. I trust that process. But my initial reaction when I'm like, oh, he came back as just supreme fan service. Please no. Like, if it, I don't think it will, but if it does turn out to be that way, then then that will be then I will be right, and I will also be very sad that I was right. We'll see what happens from here.
Yeah, I mean, in a similar vein to you, I also feel like if it was complete fan service, I'd also be quite disappointed. But I feel like even if it started out as that, and Brandon maybe just thought, "Hey, this will be a cool nod to the fans. Here's a little extra thing for the Cosmere for the fans as well." I think even if it did start out that way, which I don't think it did, but even if it did, I do trust in Sanderson's ability to kind of wrap it up in a way that will be satisfying to those people who just wanted the surface level kind of coming back of their favorite character from Mistborn, and also to the people like us who kind of take a deeper look at it and actually wanted it to make narrative sense as well. So I do trust that Brandon will, at the very least, ensure that, because that's just the kind of writer he is. And as a whole, I do enjoy Kelsier's story. I like the idea of this character that we only really got to know for one book and a kind of a novella. Directly we got to know them, but then they kind of disappeared. But over time, becoming this monolith, this huge overarching force within this wider universe. I'm really enjoying that, and I hope that Kelsier's story arc does continue for quite long, even up until maybe Mistborn era 3 and 4, but I do hope we see a lot more of Kelsier, and apparently there are more Secret History books coming, so we might very well. But yeah, I mean, those are just my closing thoughts. Just want to thank all of you guys for listening and for being with us. If you do have any topic suggestions that you would like to see personally, please leave them in the comments below. And of course, subscribe to Jackie's channel. Her links will be in the description as well. And did you have anything to say before we wrap up, Jackie, to the audience?
Thank you guys for listening to me talk here on Raven's channel, and hope to see you on my own, but I love hanging out with you guys here too.
Awesome, excellent. Yeah, thank you very much, guys, and we will see you all next time.